Are you looking to create a property portfolio and incorporate that into a limited company? If so, you had better watch this video of how you can do this. As I said in my opening speech, that you can indeed incorporate your property portfolio inside of a limited company. I'm going to show you how to do that using a partnership agreement when you have 2 or 3 or even more partners that you are working together. This particularly works well when you have a husband and wife partnership. So let's get into the details of how I show you how to set up your partnership business in your property portfolio. Okay, so let's get into the details then of incorporating your property portfolio into a limited company via your partnership business. So let's get on to the main details. Before we do though, you may be interested to learn more about property partnerships in a bit more detail. We're assuming you have the information at hand before we kind of go into the incorporation bit. So if you haven't got that information or you're not quite sure what a partnership is, or indeed why you would set up a partnership, make sure you watch this video and the link should be appearing just before my head. Please do go ahead and watch that one first before you proceed to this video, because this is a bit more advanced and it presupposes you've had a partnership in situ for a number of years, namely 3. You will be interested to know about the Partnership Act 1890 in a little more detail because it governs the incorporation rate. Feel free to look at that URL and type that into the browser so you can have a bit more of a read on that. This video hopefully will be an abridged version, so you'll have a lot more detail but in a lot less time. And finally, we're going to be talking about GAAR, which stands for, would you believe, General Anti-Abuse Rules, which used to be called General Anti-Avoidance Rule. They kind of stepped it up now with the word avoidance is gone from that word, which sounded pretty bad as it was, to abuse, which basically means if you do this, we will heavily fine you in terms of tax. And GAAR is all about using a limited company structure to gain a tax advantage. So even in my previous video when I talked about partnerships, I talked about making sure that you are not doing these sequence of events just for getting a tax advantage. Really, you should be looking at your partnership business as a genuine business, whether that's a family business or indeed business that you have with other joint venture partners. But go ahead and feel free to read GAAR. That's a 318-page dossier, so it might take you some time to get through that. Again, I will try to take the snippets of useful information from that document and apply that to this video. So why might people want to incorporate their business? Well, there's quite a few of them. First of all, you may be creating a business, and a business carries a risk. You might be wanting to formalize your business as well. So risk alongside formalization allows you to do that inside of a limited company. You'll have articles of association as an example. That would be a good document to be using for your children and indeed your spouse to follow that article of association, to be acting in accordance to your best wishes. You may also have a tax situation that you come on to hand as well, section 24, because if that affects both you and your spouse, even in a partnership arrangement, then you might decide to incorporate your property business and then not touch all of the money that you have. You might be happy to leave some money in your limited company for reinvestment, which in that case, it does make sense for you to use a limited company structure and to reinvest it in a tax efficient way. You may be able to get better deals if you are a corporate as well, rather than just a partnership. And finally, you can pass on assets to your loved ones, your children, with a lot easier structure using a company. What I want to talk about is latent gains. And it's not something that's often talked about, but it is very important for you to understand. You see, when you incorporate your property business, you need to be aware that you might be able to get some reliefs, and we'll talk about those later on. But one of the reliefs that you cannot get over is capital gains tax latent gain. What does that mean? Well, as you can see by the numbers, we've got £100,000 here, which is your original purchase price. And over time, that property may have increased in value to, let's say, £200,000. You've remortgaged that to £120,000, so you've taken money out. You've now got no money left in that deal at all. And for most part, that is something to celebrate and admire your own success because it's gone up in value. You've done really well. Unfortunately, when it comes to incorporating your property business, that can go against you. So if you've got this £120,000 of mortgage after you refinanced, that's now got £20,000 over and above the original purchase price, which is your capital account. Unfortunately, that does mean that the £20,000 would be subject to capital gains tax at 18 or 28%. 18%, of course, is for basic rate taxpayers, and 28% is for higher rate taxpayers. But you do need to be careful, guys, of when you are incorporating to make sure that you cover off this latent gain. It's a big number and it could affect your portfolio as a whole, not by the individual properties. So again, we need to just remind ourselves with a recap from the partnership video that I did before, that according to the Partnership Act 1890, this cannot be a partnership to incorporate into a limited company if it's a sham. It cannot be set up just in order for you to gain a tax advantage. No, indeed, it has to be a genuine business that you are happy to take the rewards as well as the risks, and you've got people involved that run the activities. You can incorporate after 2 or 3 years. I typically say to my clients, only incorporate once you pass your third year of your partnership accounts, just so that HMRC don't look over their shoulders at you and think, well, hold on a minute, is this a sham? Has it been set up for tax purposes? You will need to create a company bank account. You should have a bank account really for your partnership business if you watch my other video. You could use that same bank account and transfer that then to a limited company bank account with your same current providers. And that shouldn't be too bad at all. What will take some time in the incorporation of your property portfolio is the refinance, because you wouldn't be able to keep hold of your finance that's in your personal name. You would have to refinance through a limited company, which does then mean that you've got to go through the whole application process, and that can take some time. So don't forget, you may have to look at your capital gains tax. So capital gains tax, don't forget, is the difference between the market value of the property when you are moving it to a limited company and the original purchase price. So similar to the example we said before, if it's got a market value now of £200,000 and you originally purchased it for £100,000, there's £100,000 worth of gain. Now, because of TCGA 162, I apologise if I've just bored you with that, but that's the accounting reference that you need to be aware of. Why is that important? Because it allows you to defer that capital gains tax until you sell your shares. So that's a great way of incorporating without CGT. You do need to do the latent gains as we have already described, and there's also an SDLT, so stamp duty and land tax, reference there, 2003 section 15, which talks about how you can incorporate your property portfolio without any SDLT charge at all, as long as it's a business in accordance with Partnership Act 1890. And finally, you've got to really record your transactions through either QuickBooks, Xero, or other online bookkeeping systems. We of course talk about Xero and QuickBooks because that's most where our clients go. So that's the incorporation kind of watch out fors, if you like, in terms of the process. It's a complex situation. You are going to have to go through a solicitor who knows what they're doing. It's not going to be cheap. It can cost you between £5,000 and £15,000 just for the solicitor to draw up all the associated documents and then get your limited company set up. It is not really best suited for a tax advisor to get involved. It's more of a legal situation there. And as we said before, you've got this original purchase price, £100,000. You've got market value of £250,000. You've got this capital gain, which you can defer £150,000. Typically, you would pay 18% or 28% if you did property by property inside of a limited company. It's not something we would recommend you doing, but using the incorporation relief, you can indeed defer that capital gains tax pretty much forever if you do it right. So if you do have any questions, make sure you type those questions below the subject box below, and I will get back to you as soon as humanly possible. Don't forget, this video has been about if you're wanting to incorporate your property portfolio inside of a limited company, the pros and cons on to watch out for. But I would recommend you going back to the partnership video that talks more about what a partnership is and why you may have set it up. So once you've got your properties inside of a limited company, which is a long process, I have to say, you might want to consider, well, should I have a limited company? Would it put me in a better position or a worse position? And we've created a video for you to look at how to extract money out of a limited company. It will also explain whether you should have a limited company or indeed if it's a complete waste of time. As a quick hint, if all you're going to do is put all of your money inside of a limited company through incorporation process, but then extract all of the profits year in, year out, then you could be wasting your time. So make sure you watch that video, and the link should be appearing above my head as we speak. If you want to talk about our services, you can do so using the URL www.optimizeaccountants.co.uk. And if you want to talk to me for about an hour to talk about your tax situation, you can do so using the same URL, www.optimizeaccountants.co.uk. Make sure you use the code YouTube25 because you will be able to get a £100 discount to talk to me for £300 for an hour. You'll be able to upload your questions and I will be able to answer those questions for about an hour long. So it takes me an hour to understand your situation before we even speak. So you can upload your questions and your documents before the call even takes place. So anyway, if that's interesting for you, then make sure you use the URL and the YouTube 25 code, and I shall speak to you again. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. My name is Misiewicz from Optimise Accountants. I'll see you again soon.